So the topic of this one is something that is coming up a lot in personal conversations that I'm having with people, but not only that, it is also showing up in conversations that I'm having in coaching sessions or in groups that I am a part of. It's coming up in topics everywhere, and much like shame, I feel like it's a really useful one to shed light on and kind of call it out and call it what it is, so that way we can more easily identify it, and that is resistance. So whether it's resistance to feeling emotions, sometimes we just don't want to feel the shitty emotions, so we're like, no, I'm not going to sit with that. Resistance to things that need doing, same thing, we don't want to do them, we just don't want to, so we resist it even though there are things that we would need to do. Or resistance to change, that is a big one for people because change, even if it's positive, is uncomfortable. I am in the middle ground with change. I am okay with change when I choose it. So I'm really good with change when I choose it. I can adapt really easily in that way. However, there is resistance for me that shows up when change is thrust upon me and maybe it looks like it's the opposite of what I was choosing. So I often laugh at myself when I find myself in resistance to these things, because it is just such an obvious thing of, oh, this is resistance. And the thing with resistance is it can cause a lot more inner turmoil and stress, sometimes even more than the actual thing itself that we are resisting. So sometimes the feeling of resistance or the resisting of the resistance, so when we resist that we're resisting, that can increase it even more, can create more of that turmoil and stress than just doing the thing or sitting with the thing or whatever the thing is. So it takes practice to let go of resistance, because first we have to know that it's there and that's what's going on, but it is achievable. It just simply takes practice, like most things. So here are a few steps that I've found. One is identify that what you're feeling is resistant. So a good way to do this is just get into the habit of, if you're feeling yuck or gross about something, just ask yourself, is what I'm feeling resistance? Sometimes it may not be. Sometimes whatever you're feeling yuck or gross about is simply the thing to feel yuck or gross about. But it's a good habit just to check in, similar to things like, oh, is this my feeling, or did I just pick that up from someone else? Is this mine or theirs? Always just use the habit of, is this resistance? And sometimes the answer will be, nah, it's just gross. And sometimes the answer will be, yeah, totally, it's resistance. So you can identify it first. That is the first most important step. Well, they're all important, but that's key to then get to the next steps. Number 2 is ask why. So there's a thing about secondary gain. When our ego or ourselves, we get something out of staying in this limited belief or this limited space or this playing small space. So ask yourself, why am I resisting? What is it that I get out of this scenario by resisting? Sometimes there will be a clear answer, sometimes it won't make sense, but it will still be an answer because our subconscious doesn't always make logical sense. So ask yourself, what do I get out of resisting? And get curious about that. Number 3 is check in. Also important. Check in if it's actually serving you, or if you're just making yourself feel like crap for longer. This can be a confronting one because it usually reveals that, oh, I just have to deal with or sit with the shit. Damn it. Like, it's tough because it makes us see the reality of what it is. But ask yourself, like, yeah, check in, is this resistance serving me? Or am I just prolonging this shit feeling and then still have to deal with it at the other end anyway? It's really, take a few breaths when you do it, because it is a little bit of a reality check. Number 4 is one of my favorite methods. You might have a different one, but this is one I use. Put down all the steps you could take in that action. Put it down on paper. So if it's an emotion that you're resisting, you could just write down. You don't have to do it yet, but you could just write down, okay, if I weren't resisting, these are the things that I could do. I could sit and be with that and acknowledge that. Or I could have a conversation with that emotion and just be like, what is it, what is it you want to tell me? Or what is it that this is about? If it's a change, same thing. It's a little more actionable sometimes. Sometimes it's around emotions and sitting with that. Sometimes it's around, okay, what's required? What steps are required? Oh, I'm moving house. Great. Okay, I need to pack and I need to do this. So you identify the steps required for the thing that is needed to be done, granted that it's needed. And that just makes it a bit clearer. It's really useful to get it out of our heads and just onto paper. And then step 5, just choose one at a time. And that's why it's useful to put it onto paper, because we can just choose one at a time. We don't have the mess of it in our head being like, oh, I have to look at all of this all at once. We know that it's there. Our brains then know that, oh, it's written down on paper. Cool, I can come back to it whenever I need to. But for now, I can more easily focus on just the one that I pick. So just choose one thing out of that. Maybe it's, okay, I'm gonna carve out 20 minutes of my day to sit and gently inquire with this emotion. I don't need to do anything with it. I'm not expecting a miraculous result or resolution. It's not for that purpose, but I'm going to carve out that time just to acknowledge that it's there rather than resist and push it away. Or I'm going to sit in the overwhelm of, using the moving house example, sit in the overwhelm of, oh shit, I have to move house and do all this stuff for 10 minutes or whatever. I'm just going to acknowledge that the overwhelm is there. And then I'm going to maybe do a purge of my wardrobe. Maybe that's the first thing you do. Or maybe you pack up your books. Maybe that's the first thing that you do. It's easy because books are really easy to put in a box, and it gives you that sense of accomplishment and you've stepped out of the resistance. You can still feel yuck about things. This isn't about making the yuckness go away, but it is about making the yuckness of resistance, sitting with that. And again, lessening that turmoil that resistance can play a role in. So it's very interesting. I'm trying to figure out why it's showing up in all of these different conversations and everything over the last week in particular or more. And it's just a really good thing to be aware of because it shows up for all of us. Sometimes it's resistance to growth because growth is uncomfortable. So sometimes it's, again, even if it's good for us, it's resistance to, oh, I should really book in for that online course around uncomfortable conversations that Jess is running. Yes. Oh, but I'm resisting it because it's going to be uncomfortable because it literally has the word uncomfortable in the title. What do I do with that? You sit with the resistance. And then you ask yourself as well, you go through all those steps, but then you also ask yourself, what is in my highest good? What is in my highest interest? And then you find that sometimes it's not as bad. Sometimes it's not as bad as your resistance is making it up to be. So yeah, get curious about it. Be kind and gentle on yourself, but also be your biggest supporter and act in your highest good rather than in that fearful, resisting place.